On behalf of Dr. James Moore III, the Vice Provost for the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and our unit staff, welcome to Supporting First Generation High School Students' Success During COVID-19, our webinar discussion. My name is Shayla Thomas, and I have the honor of serving as the Executive Director for the Young Scholars Program. I'm joined here today with a couple of my colleagues from the Office of Diversity and Inclusion to talk for today's discussion. Janisha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. I am Janisha Finch. I'm the Program Manager in the city of Dayton, Ohio.
And Eric, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Eric Fletcher, Program Coordinator for the City of Akron with the Young Scholars Program.
Jacob, are you there? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Jacob Gillum. I'm the Program Director for the OSU ATI Upward Bound Program in Northeast Ohio.
And Tiffany, hi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Tiffany Piavalis. I am the Program Manager in Youngstown, Ohio.
Sam, hi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Robinson. I'm the Program Coordinator for the Young Scholars Program in the city of Toledo.
And those are today's panelists. I'm also joined by Brandon Britt. Brandon is the Program Manager for the Office of Diversity and Inclusion Young Scholars Program. He's going to be monitoring the chat room with us today. Can you wave to everybody, Brandon? Say hello. Brandon's going to be helping me today in monitoring our chat room discussions. To frame today's discussion, we thought it was important to share with you a little bit about the programs to which we'll be talking about. The Young Scholars Program serves approximately 900 students from across the state of Ohio from the nine major school districts. These districts include Akron Public, Canton City, Cincinnati Public, Cleveland Metropolitan School District, Columbus City, Dayton Public, Lorain City, Toledo Public, and Youngstown City Schools. We recruit and admit students in the 8th grade. All student participants are academically talented, they're first generation, low or moderately low income status, and they aspire to pursue a college education. We're also joined by Jacob, who is a representative of our Upward Bound program. Upward Bound is a program that helps eligible students prepare for college. Upward Bound offers academic advising, tutoring, college information and visits, career exploration, personal and social development workshops, academic and cultural enrichment, and assistance with financial aid searches. Upward Bound is a TRIO program funded by the Ohio Department of Education. TRIO programs help students overcome class, social, academic, and cultural barriers to higher education. Upward Bound was created in 1965 and now serves almost 60,000 students in the 816 Upward Bound projects nationwide. Ohio State's Upward Bound Wooster program services students in Orville Senior High School, McKinley Senior High School in Canton, Timken Early College in Canton, and Wooster High School in Wooster, Ohio. That's a little bit about our programs. While we are experienced in working with the populations we serve, we're not experts on coronavirus. During this discussion, we want to share with you what we've learned based on our interventions in hopes that it may provide insights and guidance for future engagement with students. This discussion centers on college-bound students. We thought it was important to emphasize that. We're talking about college-bound students. We understand that some topics of this discussion may not be pertinent to students entering the workforce, trade school, or military service. With that being said, I'd like to begin our discussion with Tiffany. Tiffany, when you heard about COVID-19, what were issues you anticipated as students began to transition to a virtual learning environment?
Well, in Youngstown, the transition to a virtual learning environment wasn't immediate, which I believe that was a shared experience for most of us in YSP. So my first thought was learning loss over access to technology, because we knew access to adequate and appropriate technology would be and still is an issue. So as a program that serves the gifted student population, I immediately became concerned for our high achieving students. You know, these are students that never received anything less than an A. They take their education very seriously and they're excited about being college bound. So I really anticipated that these scholars would panic. I also anticipated that I would see some pushback and some anger from both scholars and parents. I knew that I would have scholars that felt that they were being forced to learn in a way that they weren't comfortable and may develop issues with motivation and morale, especially when you lose that loss of structure and routine. So I also expected parents to feel overwhelmed and uncertain of their new role with this new learning environment. So it was important for us to reach out right away, just to check in, to be a part of their community, and to help process everything that was going on around them.
Thanks, Tiffany. Janisha, as the news spread that the schools were closed for an extended amount of time, what were some of your immediate concerns for students?
So initially, I definitely had to reflect on the type of students that we serve and the school districts that they attend. Our most vulnerable school districts who are normally aren't adequately equipped with proper resources. So I had to think about most of our students were on spring break at the time. So it was a question of whether or not they will all receive the information on time, if they would get adequate instructions on what they were supposed to do, and if districts had to immediately move to an all online learning platform, would students be able to have proper internet service? Would they have the correct devices that they need? Most of our students sometimes just operate on cell phones. So the question of whether they had laptops or tablets or proper computers to do that distant learning. And then kind of reflecting too, like Tiffany mentioned, gifted students, but I think about our students and their different learning styles and the way they learn. And we have a lot of students that prefer to have that face-to-face, that hands-on experience, and to be able to do that in the classroom. So thinking about how that would affect them and the struggles they would have in learning with just an online interface.
And so, Eric, as you speak with your colleagues from city to city, how were your concerns shared, and what distinct concerns did you have for students from the Akron area?
Well, luckily for YSP, we are a tight-knit family, and we have a great director and supervisor in you. So we were able to communicate via text. As soon as we got notice of this, we started setting up Zoom meetings so that we can talk about, okay, what's going on in Akron? What's going on in Cleveland, Dayton? What is it looking like for you? What's going on in Toledo, so that we can kind of get an idea of what's really happening in these different cities, so that we can kind of get on the same page, because our goal is to make sure that our students are still getting love from us as PCs and as PMs, but are still getting information that they need from their school so they are successful. Kind of to piggyback off what Tiffany just said, our students are those students who are high achieving in their classrooms. So one of the main things for me in Akron is to make sure that the students stayed engaged. I didn't want them to say, hey, we're done with school on March 13th. We're going on spring break next week. So that's 2 weeks that we're kind of away from not knowing anything. So how can these students stay engaged with what's going on around them? And then for my students in Akron, one of the concerns I had was, how's the information going to get disseminated to them? What's going on, how is that communication going to get passed down from the uppers to the administration, to the counselors, to the teachers, to the students? And how would they take that information and what would they do with that? So just making sure that the students stayed engaged. And it was important for us as a YSP staff to communicate what we had going on in our different districts, so that way we can kind of form our program and the information that we need to get sent out about our program to the students that were affected by COVID-19.
And then Jacob, as I mentioned in the TRIO and Upper Bound introduction, your program is located in the Northeast Ohio area. Participants in your program come from more rural areas, correct? So what were your concerns for students at the onset of the national quarantine?
Similar to my peers, technology access and meaningful engagements were critical to me and my staff, but One of the challenges I ran into for my more rural students was the physical isolation during the stay-at-home orders. Many of my families, because I serve low-income families, they were not the providers of their own transportation. So some of them, which were 10 to 20 minutes out from from town, unable to access the Worcester Transit, Canton Transit, etc., their family members or the other friends of families who would historically be providing them transport were understandably unable or unwilling to provide that during those stay-at-home orders. So the intense physical isolation that came with being away from food, the ability to shop, etc. And then on top of that, I think a major issue that I've faced with my student population, one of my concerns has been overnight, some of my students became the breadwinners of their families. They went from working their part-time jobs to being able to work almost up to a full-time hours at the fast food joints, the Kroger, Walmart, etc. And there was the largest paycheck coming in on top of the babysitting, on top of their virtual education. So all of those factors compounding and trying to help our students create a structure and deal with the panic and concern of being isolated were some of my constraints.
And Sam, we've heard from almost everyone that access to technology was a primary concern for many families. Can you share some of the strategies that Toledo Public Schools use to ensure technology access and those strategies that are impacting the young scholars? Uh-oh, can't hear Sam. Hold on one second. We're gonna unmute you. There we go.
Can you hear me?
There we go, Sam. Yep.
The school district understood the disparity with access to technology. And keep in mind, having to move a school district of about 22,000 students over to remote learning quickly was going to be difficult. Students not only lacked access, but many of them lacked adequate technology. So some of the innovative things that the district did was they first utilized some of the resources that were at their disposal. One being the school buses. They were sitting in a bus garage, but they also had Wi-Fi capabilities. So they strategically placed them in low-income areas throughout the community, providing access not only to students within the district, but also students outside of TPS. With the help of community partners like the Lucas County Public Libraries within the city, they were closed, but students in those neighborhoods were still able to access Wi-Fi from those buildings, as well as the district extended the reach of Wi-Fi access at the school buildings for families. So now all these things were put in place prior to the governor officially closing schools for the remainder of the year. But once the announcement was made, the district did begin to distribute Chromebooks to all TPS families. So the district provided hotspots with those Chromebooks for families who needed it. TPS also launched a website, TPS at Home, and this website was just dedicated to providing resources to help students stay connected during the remote learning period.
Nice. And you're getting lots of compliments in the chat room to say congratulations to Toledo for good work in disseminating that, those technologies out to their students. Through the transition to online learning, you all mentioned that an added virtual workshops and discussions with students have been added to as a program component to all of our programs in each of your high school cohort years. So Tiffany, as you were meeting with students virtually, what were some of the students expressed concerns in your one-on-one and your group workshops?
Well, since our stay-at-home orders, I arrange cohort meetings at least every 3 weeks, along with checking in on our scholars on an individual basis. So these initially began as conference calls and then transitioned to Zoom meetings. So we began every meeting answering these questions: how are you and how is your family? Early on, scholars express high anxiety and fear. You know, I have scholars that live with their grandparents, and they were really concerned that that particular age group was a higher risk for contracting the virus. And I also have a significant amount of parents that are considered essential workers, you know, grocery stores and nursing homes and things like that. So our scholars were really worried and upset about that. I had a young lady, she told me that she was fearful every day about her mom, and she's afraid that she's going to work one day and she would not come back home. You know, so that was just one of the many examples that I had that really, you know, struck a chord with me. And honestly, Dr. Thomas, it broke my heart. Academically, some scholars said that they felt like they were just doing busy work and it wasn't necessarily connected to what they were learning in the classroom. So they felt like they were not being challenged. Other concerns were the inability to do the work, especially mathematics. They felt like they were teaching themselves. And what I really think that was is that some students lost the ability to have immediate feedback. And, you know, now it might take a day or two to get your questions answered. So this caused a lot of frustrations. So I've had to spend some time talking through these difficulties and especially reminding scholars that their teachers are experiencing a dramatic shift in their daily lives too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Eric, what were some of the non-academic factors that have been most prevalent for students since the beginning of COVID-19?
One that I like to remind myself of, because I have two kids in my house that are second grade and seniors, but the kids need to adjust to us as well. So as much as the parents have to adjust to the kids being at home, the kids have to adjust to the parents being there all the time as well, because we're trying to work around each other's learning and lifestyle, and being around each other for 24 hours in a day is a little different when you get that 8-9 hour break from work and from school. But kind of alluding to what Jacob said earlier, is that our students are working. Okay, I'm scheduled to do maybe 2 to 3 hours of schoolwork. So the rest of these hours, I'm going to be out getting into the job. Target is hiring. The local grocery stores are hiring. Fast food restaurants, they have a lot of drive-through and pickup. So the students are getting 30, 35, 40 hours, are providing, that financial stability for the family. And some of them are being, babysitters. One of my students, her mother has a few foster kids. And while her mother is a central worker, so the mother goes out and work 10 hours a day, she's at home taking care of 8 kids that are all under the age of 14.
Wow.
She's only a sophomore. So her time is spent doing that. And then another factor that we have to take in place is spacing. Some of our students don't have the luxury of having a 1,500, 2,000 square foot home when it's just 2 or 3 people in there. Sometimes they're packed in houses where there are multiple kids. Rooms are shared. So it's hard for them to actually study in the rooms that they're in, or the spaces that they're in. And we didn't have the luxury like Toledo getting, buses placed into the neighborhood. So having that access to Wi-Fi, adequate Wi-Fi, to actually being able to, get your online schooling, being able to click in the Wi-Fi and do this and do that. So those are some of the factors that go in place when we talk about the COVID-19 that outside of just the academics.
Yeah. Jacob, we're curious to know, how did TRIO adjust policy and grant requirements to assist with addressing the needs of students?
So TRIO programming from the federal level has some interesting and at times rigid creative constraints from the policy perspective. So the Department of Education hasn't, to my knowledge, offered any additional guidance about how to respond to the crisis. But the Council for Opportunity and Education, which is the lobbying and support unit for TRIO education, has had a lot of webinars they've offered where they've revisited some of the legal language and really helped me kind of reframe my understanding of how I can proceed. And through that end, I've been able to create arguments using the existing legislation and rules within Upward Bound to help, for instance, make an argument for why during my virtual summer programming, I can substantively increase my stipends for my students, why I'm allowed to continue to feed my students during their virtual educational experience, even if I don't have them in residential, and how to adjust the kinds of classwork I'll be having them do so that we're not merely just doing simply review and just academic stuff, but still try to lace in some of those reach goals and the more ambitious things of having them meet and interact with professionals from all across the world, professionals from different educational backgrounds, and make that a meaningful part of the educational services.
Thank you. And then Janisha, you work with students in 9th through 12th grade primarily. How did the concerns of your upperclassmen, your 11th and 12th graders, differ from your underclassmen, your 9th and 10th graders?
So I would say for 11th grade students, they had major concerns because we have our 3.3, I won't say mandatory, but our 3.3 GPA that our students have to carry. So for our juniors, they were concerned of how the grading scales are going to go, finishing up that fourth quarter, you know, whether they were going to have to switch over to a pass-fail type of format, or if they were just struggling with online, what their grades would look like and would it affect their GPA that is required for them to participate in our program. For our seniors, you know, as a parent of a senior and having multiple conversations with our seniors, I really think like grief and disappointment. Seniors, you know, got cheated or cut out of their traditions and celebrations that they would normally have their senior year, looking forward to graduation and signing days and things like that. So lots of disappointment for them. I would say from a program perspective, we were more focused on making sure that we continue to provide the support that they needed, keeping them encouraged to meet dates and deadlines, finish the school year strong. One way that we were able to service the students at the time, we were doing housing contracts, and normally we would meet with them, sit down with them, go through the contract, help them answer questions that they had on the contract, and they would then print the contract for us, because that's the way that we get their housing fees paid. However, we had to be very creative on how to get those housing contracts back to us. So we had to learn how to let them sign online, print and sign, and we had to accept photos, which is something we normally don't do, but we had to change the way that we work with them so that we can continue to provide that support.
Sam, can you please discuss your observations in students' change of motivation or schoolwork since transitioning to virtual learning?
Speaking with my scholars, I feel student motivation declined in several ways. Some students felt they were just given busy work in comparison to actual learning. Students shared how they missed teachers, and not just because they missed instructional learning, but many of them just missed that social interaction with school staff. Understanding school is sometimes the only place that students may feel empowered or appreciated. And unfortunately, a lot of our scholars, they don't receive a lot of academic support at home. And this is no attack on parents at all, because understanding working with first generation college bound students, their parents may not have had the best educational experience. And it can be difficult trying to assist a child in a household who is typically the tutor in the household for younger and older siblings. I have some scholars who in their household, English is the second language spoken. So it can be difficult in these situations to get assistance at home. And just thinking about parents, they have all these uncertainties that have come along with the pandemic, job security, financial problems. And now basically you're homeschooling your children. So it can be a struggle, it can impact motivation. And even as a parent myself, living through COVID-19 with 3 daughters and my oldest being a freshman in high school, I can admit that I've had some intense battles with Algebra 1. But another factor that I wanted to highlight is that I believe that has led to lack of motivation with our students is that the school provided a structure for them. And I believe that loss of structure was major. Students feel like they don't know what they should be doing when they're at home. So as this all applies to YSP, we're definitely sensitive to the circumstances of our scholars, but our expectations of our scholars toward their academics didn't change. We expect our students to have a commitment to their education, and understanding through their learning may look different, but what can they do to make sure that it's continuing? So as I worked with scholars individually, I spent some time focusing on helping them create a schedule at home structured around their academics, physical, and mental well-being.
There's some talk in the discussion in the chat room about some of the school districts changing from a graded option to a pass, no pass option. Sam, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. And as you observe some of the changes, can you please share some of the differences in the students' expectations of their academic performance between YSP and school teachers or the administrators of the districts? How did those expectations differ from the different units to which students are working?
So when the decision came down that they were changing from a pass-fail grade, I think a lot of our students kind of had the idea that, well, the first 3 quarters I had straight A's, so why am I continuing to do the online learning? Why am I continuing to do the packets? So my conversation with those scholars was to kind of focus on the idea of just like a sport. If you were to stop playing a sport for 2 months, do you think you would be as good as you were 2 months ago? And I kind of use that as an example as far as them continuing to apply themselves as far as their academics educationally in the classroom and continue to do those packages regardless of if they felt that there was useless or if it was just busy works in that aspect.
We're going to transition and talk a little bit about our graduating seniors. All of us have high school seniors that are graduating from our programs. Tiffany, what are your graduating students concerned about as they prepare to graduate from high school?
I think in addition to typical concerns that most first generation students have, our class of 2020 had the unfortunate burden of having a cloud of uncertainty over them. Early on, they were very anxious about if they were gonna have prom, they're thinking about senior trip, they're thinking about walking across the stage. But now that we've known for about a month and a half now that these milestones were either canceled or will be in some sort of virtual format, and that our university orientation will be online as well. So now the number one concern is uncertainty for the future. A lot of questions, a lot of anxiety that comes with that. They want to know, are they traveling to Columbus in the fall, or will their freshman year be virtual? Many of our scholars have been with us since the 8th grade, and through YSP, they have had opportunities to visit campus and engage with students, faculty, staff. And I think especially our summer residential programs have done a tremendous job of making our scholars feel like they're a part of the campus community. And they've been ready to have this whole college experience. This is what they've been building upon since the inception of them being enrolled in our program. So they have expressed to me that if the university moves to 100% online learning, they feel that everything that they worked so hard for is being taken away from them.
Janisha, how has the shift to virtual graduation affected your graduating seniors, and share what the program has done to celebrate those graduating students?
Okay, so again, seniors, they feel cheated. They don't have the opportunity to have that graduation. And as I mentioned before, I'm a parent of a senior. I feel cheated. I paid for that cap and gown. We have struggled this senior year, and I don't get to see my son walk across that stage. So I sympathize with the students. Some of them feel like, they don't have the opportunity to have that closure, to have the proper goodbye with their high schools, their teachers, and their friends. So they're really struggling with that. But I will say, as a program, I am, excited to share what we did. I'm proud of what we did. Normally we have a senior signing day where we bring them to campus and they can sign their official letters of commitment to the university, and we celebrate with them and their parents, and they get a lot of paraphernalia. So what we decided to do was we sent out, Mr. Britt, who was monitoring the chat room, took on the task to send out packets to all of our graduating seniors. They receive honors cords that we give out to our students. They receive their t-shirts. I'm probably gonna say this backwards, but I think it says OSU committed and YSP accepted. They got copies of their letters of commitment. And so we asked the students and their families to take pictures, take videos of them signing their letters of commitment and submitting those to us. And we will be sharing them on our social media platform soon, so that the world can see that we are still celebrating these seniors for their accomplishment and achievements that they made this year.
Yes, Sam, our student workshops typically begin with a written reflection. Recently, you were asked for seniors to write letters to their senior year. What were some of the common themes that emerged from the senior year letters?
All right, so to kind of give you guys some backstory to this project, our program coordinator in Canton, Lisa Gissendanner, Ms. G, while just checking in on her seniors, she heard the disappointment and a sense of loss by our seniors because of the school's closing. So she came up with the idea to give her seniors the task to write a reflection of their feelings titled Dear Senior Year. The other cities followed suit and asked the same of their seniors. So for many students, this activity was therapeutic, and for some scholars, it gave them a space to grieve. It allowed them a moment to kind of put their feelings in perspective. So many of our seniors felt well, shortchanged, like many of you guys have already said, missing out on their senior activities such as prom, a traditional graduation, spring sports, and some of the letters were more intimate. Seniors share how family and loved ones who were diagnosed with COVID-19 and how they were dealing with it. So I can say like the sense of loss was kind of the theme with many of the letters, and students wanted that opportunity to be properly recognized for their achievements, and not just from their senior year, but graduating high school is a milestone for many of them, and they felt like they missed out on that. So the letters were all compiled, and I want to thank the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and the communication specialist, Kim Kverick, for providing a platform for our senior letters to actually be seen by others. So I do want to encourage you all to check out the ODI website and read some of the letters from our seniors. They're very compelling. And just recently, an article in Ohio State News was written that also highlights our senior letters.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam, for that highlight. Jacob, are students reconsidering where they're going to attend school as a result of COVID-19?
The short answer is yes, at least within my experience, but the more nuanced answer would be, students are tended to go to college for a variety of different reasons. Some want the advertised college experience, living on dorms, meeting new people, having a lot of those experiences that you can only have during that small period of time whenever you can afford to go to school and not have other responsibilities. Other students have a career or specific knowledge set that they're interested in, and they're looking for the outcome after college. Either way, both groups are looking at the fall and wondering if that's going to be a virtual education, and what does it matter to them whether they're a Bobcat, a Buckeye, or a Zip if the tuition is going to be $10,000 and they're doing a virtual education regardless. So there is definitely some ambivalence towards the institutions that they'll be attending. It's more now, at least again, from my limited anecdotal experience, they're more interested in what is the outcomes or what's the chances I'll get that experience I was hoping for from whichever school I attend.
Thanks. Eric, given the current circumstances, what additional resources should be put in place to address students' transition from high school to college?
Kind of going back to what Sam talked about with structure, students that I've come across, they need a timeline. Providing a timeline that gives some dates, not only for high school. Okay, this is what you should expect. Far as this is the virtual graduation time. Okay, let's put a date on it. Your senior transcripts will be done by this. You will have classes complete by this date. And then going to college. Okay, here are the dates that you need for your housing. Housing contracts need to be done by here. You can look to expect the housing contract to come out on this date, or the decision to come out on this date. Here's how you can go about finding roommates, because I have those questions. Like, hey, what's going on with housing? How can we communicate with roommates? How can we find a roommate? What's going on with orientation? But the university should provide some type of timeline or frequent asked questions for the students that's easily accessible. If it's not easy for me to find, and I've visited different, especially the OSU websites, but it's going to be hard for a first gen student to do so as well. One thing that I find happening for my scholars in the city of Akron is providing supplemental tutoring for our students. They have the math placement test coming up, the foreign language test coming up during orientation for them to get placed in certain levels and classes at the universities, but giving them some type of supplemental learning or tutoring to help those students, with that transition from high school to college. Like I said earlier, the students' last in-class session were in March. It's now May 21st. So taking those 2 months off, Sam, the jump shot is not going to be what it was before. So the students aren't going to have that ability to just snap back into the classroom like that. So having some way that we can say, hey, we're going to do these tutoring sessions, or have this person that you can talk to regarding this. I sent out the math placement test for our students to actually study, so that every week I'm going to check in on, say, hey, we went through these problems, now let's continue to do this, because it keeps their mind going, but it's another resource for them to continue learning. And then being able to provide certain things at home within your city that's able to help those students out. If they need help with finding outside scholarships, okay, they may have received something for their counselor, but what can you as a mentor, as a coordinator, as a manager, provide for those students to look. Resources for the home life. Okay, I know I can call 211 here in the city of Akron, and I can get students shelter, I can get them food, I can get them clothing, I can find ways to get their utilities paid at home. Jobs. Some of those students may be needing jobs to help pay for some things as they get ready to transition to college. With a lot of some jobs that will be open, like some of the summer programs, they don't have those job opportunities now. But what are some other ways, maybe through the Urban League, that we can get students some type of financial assistance to help them out? You're thinking outside of the academics, but resources that's going to help them in their lifestyle, but also, I know somebody alluded to it earlier, but the mental capacity. We need to find something that's going to help our students learn how to meditate, learn how to deal with any mental issues they may be dealing with. Maybe it's anxiety, having panic attacks, going through depression right now because, hey, Janisha, I feel cheated, man. My son missed out on his track season. Mr. Thomas, you would understand, his senior track season, he missed out on the opportunity. So the students may be going through that. So how can we provide them with some type of structure to help them mentally deal with what's going on with COVID-19, either personally or with someone in their family that may have passed away or suffering from COVID-19. So I think that's what we really need to kind of focus in on, is what ways can we help our students holistically and provide them with those resources.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate you mentioning the idea of a timeline early in the conversation, Eric. I saw a comment in our comment section, our conversation, that asked about FAFSA. I'm going to speak about YSP and then maybe a resource that I'm aware of here in the Central Ohio area or Columbus area. So for the Young Scholars Program, the priority deadline to apply to Ohio State University for incoming freshmen is November 1. For the Young Scholars Program, we use an October 1 application deadline. We have our students participate in a summer academy program that focuses on, is a 1-week residential program that focuses on the essay and application process. So through that, we've already started the application process for our students. We then have our students apply to the university by October 1, which gives us about a month to address any issues that can arise between October 1 and November 1. We actually, in the Young Scholars Program, use November 1 as our FAFSA deadline. So I think we were wise in our practice, and by the time that we hit COVID in March, our students had already completed the FAFSA process. In YSP, what we missed was the April workshop, in which we go over the award letter workshop. And so we were creative. We have a financial aid specialist on our staff. And so Mr. Zamaripa had Zoom sessions with each city, one at a time, to which he shared the award letter. He created a form for each student to show them what their award letter would be. And then he did a Zoom session as a presentation with each city, and then with each family to go over their award letters. And so that was something that did not impact YSP in the ways that it may have impacted some of our peers and students in other cities. I know that, and I've continued to receive information from I Know I Can here in Columbus. I know that there are I Know I Can representatives here with us today in our discussion, and I continue to receive information. I know that I Know I Can was very proactive in trying to give some of the same information. In fact, YSP partners with I Know I Can in doing some of those workshops and making sure that students are submitting their FAFSA on time. But certainly, I think that in other cities, there was concern about making sure that students were able to submit their FAFSAs on time. And I don't know if anyone wanted to speak to the FAFSA. Jacob, maybe you or anyone else who wanted to talk about FAFSA and how it impacted students that are non-YSP in their cities.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to our program. My academic advisor, Brooke Skiba, tends to work one-on-one with all of our students to make sure they apply for their FAFSA and get it in a timely fashion. We didn't have any issues this year meeting into the student deadlines, the institutional deadlines. What we are doing now for those students that had applied for multiple schools and are trying to get the a best financial deal out of their situation. What we're trying to do is to see if we can't get additional funding from the school, because some families have lost their jobs. They are petitioning to see if they can get additional federal funds because of a change in their income status, and just bargaining with different institutions to see if they can get a better aid package overall, or meeting a competitor school's aid package, so that they can play the game of getting the best financial aid for the year.
That is a great point, Jacob. Thank you so much for making that point. Janisha, I want to ask you, in your opinion, what are some of the advantages that the Young Scholars Program has over other university support service offices seeking to support students through this national crisis?
Okay, so I definitely think that our program is unique amongst other programs because we generally serve as a pipeline to the Ohio State University. Of course, all of our scholars reside in the state of Ohio. We operate as a smaller unit within the Office of Diversity Inclusion, so we are able to have a program coordinator and or manager in each of the cities that we serve. So our scholars have an individual person that they can work with on a regular basis. All of our program coordinators and managers basically come from similar backgrounds that our students have, so we can relate to their adversities and help them work through these different situations in home life. We definitely work together as a team. We collaborate often, we share our ideas and bounce off each other and give feedback so that we ensure we are serving our scholars the proper way and giving them all the resources that they need. We have extensive and ongoing relationships with our scholars and their families because we start recruiting them at 8th grade and begin to work with them from 9th grade through their senior year. And then once they get to campus, we also have a wonderful collegiate staff that continues to work with those students. So we are really student focused and student centered, and we are learning how to adjust our programming and our services to ensure that we can meet all of our students' needs, especially during a unique time like this.
Tiffany, I shared with you in a conversation offline the other day that I had heard the new term virtual belonging. And so I'm interested in your ideas about how can you help support students foster a sense of belonging in a virtual learning, if virtual learning persists through the 2021 academic year?
Sure. Fostering a sense of belonging begins with trust. And really, to me, the best way to foster trust is to communicate. I think it's especially important to be transparent and communicate with scholars and families, even when you don't have all the answers. You know, early on, before Zoom became a thing, before that became a part of our everyday life, we weren't sure who had access to adequate technology. And at that time, you know, I think we could all relate, we didn't know much at all. But we did recognize that we had to act quickly in order to be effective. We reached out to our scholars in various ways, you know, social media, text messaging, phone calls, and some of us even sent letters. You know, we did what we had to do. And we did that in order to express the fact that in whatever learning format we have currently and moving forward, we continue to remain advocates and we continue to support our scholars in their transition from high school to college. You know, we have high expectations for our scholars and they know this. So it's imperative that we continue to uphold that if virtual learning persists. By marrying our routine of monthly workshops and one-on-one meetings with creating safe spaces to allow our scholars to vent or just to talk, to let us know what's going on in their home lives. And because they know, because of our ongoing relationship and bonds that we've created here, and we're sincere, we're genuine, you know, that really reinforces our trust and continuation of community building.
Eric, can you share some of these students' academic responses to the paper packets and online work assignments that were assigned to them?
Some of the students' responses.
Honestly.
Well, honestly, you have some, and I want to say that speaking from our students' perspective, because we have students who are really smart, some that are really gifted, so they can receive a packet on Monday, be done on Monday, and the rest is just, hey, it is what it is. So for our seniors, in Akron, we had the 4 pathways that the students can take in order to graduate. And the first 3 quarters is those are already together. For the 4th quarter, if you did well the 3rd quarter, that's going to be your grade. For the 4th quarter, you don't have to do anything else. So for a senior, it's like, sweet. I have to do nothing else. I have to take an AP test, so I'll study for that and move on. For the juniors, it was like, and I kind of had to do the same thing that Sam kind of alluded to when he talked about this is, hey, there's an uncertainty of what's going to happen next year. But because you're in this program, because you're a high achieving student, you need to continue to focus and do well in the classes that you're taking, because I don't want something to happen and you not meet that 3.3 because you slacked off because the work wasn't what you thought it was going to be. Students are only having FaceTime with their teachers or office hours with their teachers maybe once or twice a week. So there is no instruction. So for a math class, I can't give them that help for pre-calculus. Mr. Fletcher doesn't know that. And for them to only see a teacher once a week for a pre-calc class, it's like, come on, man. So some of them are being frustrated, like, hey, I'm not getting the assistance that I need. And I had to explain to them, it's your learning style. So sometimes you have to bug those teachers. And one of the things that Tiffany just said is we have to be advocates for our students. So I will send out emails to our teachers, say, hey, you have this student in this class. They're trying to get a hold of you regarding this work. Can you please respond back to them? And I'll CC the parent as well as the student on the email so that they know, hey, these students need your assistance as well. And, and I get some good responses because I'm pretty cool with some of the teachers. But I get, positive responses from the teachers to help our students out, because sometimes they don't know how to form the words to communicate the correct way with those teachers. And sometimes the teachers, they will ignore them. But once you see that there's somebody invested in their education, they're more than willing to help. But in overall, the students are like, hey, it's just pass, fail. I already got my grades from the 3rd quarter, so I'm good this 4th quarter. The package that they do send, I'll knock them out in the first day or 2. And then after that, I'm just relaxing, chilling. A lot of it isn't challenging to them. But again, we have to take into account some of the schools that we have. All schools are not created, equal. So we have some schools here in the city of Akron who have a high expectation of our students. So the teachers will assign heavy and they will communicate. And you have some schools, lean on me. You have some schools you try, and so some of those students are just like, I got my packet, I'm done. They're adjusting to it, and I tell them you have to give the teachers opportunity to adjust to the online learning as well, because this is something new for them. So be patient, but if you're not getting the assistance that you need, make sure you communicate that so that we can get you the assistance that you need and make sure that you are getting these classes taken care of, because this is your education. And if you want to be great, you have to educate yourself.
Sam, what have you learned new about your students since transitioning to a virtual engagement?
So since working with my scholars through Zoom, one thing I noticed about some of my students recently is my students who are usually more quiet and not as outspoken as other scholars seem to have opened up a little more. Students have been able to offer other scholars assistance with homework, which I think is great. I think some of the values that we share in YSP has helped with the transition of virtual engagement. So scholars know that we're a family and we like to celebrate one another's successes. So this has allowed students to have a sense of camaraderie and bond with scholars from other schools where they typically won't meet unless they have workshops monthly. So I think during this time when students feel a disconnect from school, our scholars feel comfortable in the fact that they have someone that's checking on them and supporting them academically. Also, one thing that I noticed is that our students are savvy and resourceful when it comes to technology. I know Janisa kind of shared about our housing contracts and just with that process and how the students have to have, they cannot electronically sign it. So they have to actually print it off and sign it and send it to us, and then we'll send it off to Columbus. But during a stay-at-home order, you know, one of my students in particular, just to make sure that we weren't putting anyone at risk, they used Snapchat to sign their housing contract. And so I just was impressed by just their resourcefulness with just the technology and just overall just seeing their perseverance in my scholars, just understanding that things don't go as planned, but they're proven to me like their willingness just to adapt.
I agree. Jacob, what have you learned about how colleges support and engage high school students participating in college pipeline programs?
So prior to COVID-19, I was working with several faculty members to discuss ways I could partner with them to provide students more information about workforce development and careers, which would require at least an associate, since that's the parameter for my grant. And during those conversations and leading into coronavirus, I would discover something I would call kind of like a happy disconnect. There are lots of professors right now that want to do pre-collegiate work across disciplines. And programs like YSP, programs like Upward Bound, we're in this really beautiful place where we have access to these really amazing, young, ambitious students. And we also have access to this amazing body of faculty. And again, prior to COVID-19, I was looking at ways and starting to meet with different faculty to find out ways that I could tap into the talent pool within the university so that during my summer program and during my college visits, instead of like doing like general college visits, I could pluck out my very specific people, students who have very specific interests, and not just take them to like a college of blanks laboratories, but I got to the point where I was able to get my students connected with specific professors to learn about specific research. And I think what I'm beginning to see, especially now when I'm hearing all of these professors, their concerns are the next generation of the labor pool in America and the world at large. We need to be able to engage with them, not just as college students, but when they're younger, to begin to show them the world that they could occupy. And this is where I might be a little utopian and far-flung in the world beyond COVID-19, but I'm seeing that these college pipeline programs, we have the ability to tap into that drive and desire that faculty have to expand their reach into younger populations to really help students see an end path for their education. We can be that connective tissue that connects those ambitious young people to those faculty and help guide them to find ways to communicate and use the resources together. So big utopian vision, but like I'm seeing some really amazing things, and I'm hopeful that after this, whenever we begin to get to a world post-coronavirus, I can return to some of those conversations and learn what I've learned from this time, or use what I've learned from this time to push the envelope on those areas a little more aggressively.
Thank you. And there's still so many uncertainties about the lasting effects of COVID-19. Student support services and how we engage students in the programs may look differently in the future as they did in the past. This question is posed to anyone on the panel. What changes are you making during the pandemic that may become more permanent for YSP or Upward Bound to continue to provide student support services? And that's for anyone.
I'm not YSP, but I'm willing to say one thing that I can definitely say. So one of the things that my program assistant and we really worked on, how do we set up an easier data flow from student to us as far as when we're recruiting, enlisting, and getting students set up. And for this year, our challenge was we had to recruit well over 30 students during a pandemic. So it was really interesting. And what we ended up setting up, we've cut an hour out of the interview process by the way we pre-collect data and virtually collecting it. We're able to collect data then, like if anyone's familiar with like building good surveys, I delved deeply into the research and evaluation and how to make surveys. And so we built these much tighter surveys to collect data throughout the spring so they're not overwhelmed at any one time with the millions of questions, so that at the end of the situation, we have a lot of different data pools to draw from like their next year academics. We have information that, what are your preferences for reading material? What are some of your struggles, both materially as far as the internet goes, but also what are some things that you've struggled with in the past with communicating with instructors? And so we have this small database on our current and upcoming students. And if we continue to collect this data and use it in the academic year, it'll help the academic advisor role, because we have the office-facing roles are able to take that data or collect that data and then feed it into the academic advisor in a way that has really streamlined identifying those barriers and finding ways to remove them.
And I'm going to incorporate some of the questions that have been posed in the chat as we wrap up in our questions. As you consider the overall experience and challenges of graduating seniors, how do you imagine, if at all, that their fall transition will be impacted logistically, mentally, or emotionally? And that's for anyone to answer.
I'll answer that.
Okay.
It's going to be tough. I mean, this to be very candid and very honest. We are all in an area of uncertainty. We don't know if campuses are going to open up to allow students to come to campus in the fall. And if they do, again, as a parent who has a student getting ready to start college, I'm still concerned is if they open up, will he be safe? I hate to say it this way, but I know we had a conversation before. Like, if you think about it, a college campus with students moving in from all across the country, it's a petri dish within itself, to be honest. So thinking about if universities open and these students come and they move in with this virus still present, what kind of danger are we setting our students up for? And then also thinking, if they do not open up, what does that mean for students? Like, I've had my own concerns and nerves, like, what does that mean for our scholars? What does that mean for my son and having to do your freshman year of college online? Like, you've already dealt with struggling and like, hey, okay, I've completed and I'm graduating, but then to have to do college online, again, some of your homes are not equipped. You don't have the proper space for studying and doing that kind of work. So it's already a transition from high school to college. Mm-hmm. So then to have to do that, at home, in an environment that you may not be able to study productively, or think about some of these seniors, or again, my own child who, they don't get up until after 12 noon, 1 o'clock, they up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So they got to fall back into that discipline, and it's hard to do that at home.
Mm-hmm. This is another question that was posed by Joel Nelson. He asked, do you think there are other missed opportunities in this, such as engaging students' voices in some of these decisions? And is there a learning opportunity for students and districts, et cetera, through this crisis?
Yeah, one thing that I've been working with my scholars on just during this time, and understanding that they're at home and a lot of them are bored, and we've talked about just the homework and these learning packets and, just their feeling of not completing the work. And I talked to them a lot about just employability skills. So these skills that you can actually continue to learn right now is going to help you through that process going to college. So just kind of staying focused with them and having them kind of concentrate on, even though this time right now, it seems like, we're in dark times, but how can you turn this into a positive? How can you actually grow skills from this? So just things like working on time management skills and working on your listening skills. A lot of our scholars, encouraging them to reach out and email their teachers. So a lot of our freshmen, our younger students, just the idea of them emailing an adult other than probably their parents or their program coordinators, they may feel a little uncomfortable. So that's just a skill that they'll use once they get to college. They may have to reach out to their professors or their instructors, planning office hours and things of that nature. So just using this time, finding it to make it a situation where it's a positive and they feel like they're actually growing and it's preparing them for college.
To kind of piggyback off of that, Sam, and to answer the question, is I think that YSP, our coordinator, and you may do this as well, Jacob, is we ask our students for their input of what's going on, how can we make this better, what are some things you need out of this. A lot of times you have people that sit high in those chairs making decisions for these students. They don't really communicate with the students. But one of the things that we do is we communicate with our students so that we can give better programming for them and so that we can provide better services, especially during this time, to help ease some of their pain. Like Tiffany said, it's about trust. And I feel that we do a great job of communicating and building trust with our students. So, when we tell them something, they know that it's for their benefit because they trust us and we trust that we're going to give them the best opportunity to be successful. But as far as like the classroom settings or the online settings, how certain things are going, there definitely needs to be that communication from the bottom up so that they know what our students are experiencing and what they're expecting and what some of their expectations moving forward and how they dealt with this these past 2 months of schooling to help if this should happen or carry on into next fall.
And Jacob, this question I'm going to pose towards you. We sit on a committee together, and I'm going to ask you to represent our committee. We've been Upward Bound and Young Scholars Program have historic summer residential programs. And so there's a question about whether or not we're going to continue with our summer programs. Did we decide to transition to a virtual format? And then if so, why did we continue? Why are we deciding to do our summer programs?
Yes, absolutely. We're still doing our summer programming. There are all three of the summer programs at ODI are going to go virtual. The reason why is the students' needs don't disappear or change even if the situation changes. Mm-hmm. And it's our responsibility to figure out a way to deliver services to ensure that our students are receiving the kind of quality resources that they deserve based on the arrangement we made with them. So our responsibilities don't stop even in light of a pandemic. And that would be my answer.
And another question to you all, who from your district or local communities have been your strongest partners during this this transition or dealing with COVID-19?
In most cities, you have the guidance counselors have been helpful with getting information to us so we can get the information to our students as well, and just helping us with especially with our seniors, providing transcripts, grades for all of our students. But the counselors have definitely done a great job of kind of keeping us in the loop of what's going on in the district. You have some administrators who are helpful as well, as some of the PCs and PMs are located inside the schools in the district for which they reside. So we have those connections with those individuals to kind of help us ease the pain and get understanding of what's going on so that we can, maybe attend a graduation to kind of root on our scholars as we've done in the past, or attend a virtual meeting to the school board so that we can recognize the students from that city that will be headed off to the Ohio State University. For me in Akron, I know some of my community partners, that people that I know that are maybe alum or that work in the city. Like I said, folks at 211, which is with the United Way of Summit County, have been helpful in helping me get information out to students. And then some local restaurants where you may need to feed some students, or some students may be, they may go without. So local restaurants who may donate food or say, hey, have your students come this time, families come this time, so that they can help out. So just, I know for me in Akron, but I know some of our other cities have alluded to that as well.
Anyone else want to speak to their partners?
I'll say in Toledo, the school district has done a good job with keeping all its community partners updated with the ongoings of the district. I rely heavily upon the district community liaison just to receive updates and resources to share with my scholars. Just during this time, the community liaison, they took time to schedule a Zoom meeting with all the college access programs in Toledo, along with the College Career Readiness Executive Director of Toledo Public Schools. And they shared information with us to find out what our needs were as it pertained to our students, and gave us an opportunity to share what we were doing with our students in hopes of kind of collaborating. And kind of like what Eric said, just recognizing our school counselors. They've done a great job with just making sure that they were assisting the students. I know our rising seniors, our juniors currently, you know, they're in the process of taking the ACT. So they're planning on taking the ACT in June. So we needed to collect waivers for these students. And I just received outpour emails just from the counselors to the point where I had to turn some of them down. Like, I have the waivers. Thank you for the support. So just a big shout out to the counselors. And also just thinking about the counselors, we just announced our new 2020 cohort of scholars, and Toledo, we admitted a class of 37 scholars. And I'm grateful for the assistance of our counselors in the district with identifying these students. So it's just a great moment for me personally, because when I took the position, we only had 38 scholars altogether. So to have a class of 37, that's awesome.
Yeah. Jacob, do you want to talk about some of the resources that you're using there in the community where you serve?
Yeah, so restaurants for sure. I'm in conversation with 8 different restaurants across 2 different cities to break up feeding at least 1 meal a day for the duration of my summer program, which is 6 weeks. So trying to get the logistics of that. They've been really engaged, trying to work with me and OSU Extension to create nutritionally complete meals, and also doing it within my budget. The other major resource I would say has been the faculty of OSU ATI. In particular, Dr. Victor Ujor, to name drop. He is working with us for our STEM summer practices, and he has gone out of his way to learn new things and adjust the entire lessons and protocols so that he can do it virtually and make sure our students still have those hands-on experiences. And then within the actual high schools that I serve, we have a small group of really dedicated teachers who have throughout the years helped serve our program, be it as just a point of contact for our students, or going on field trips with us, or serving during our summer program as teachers. And they've really stepped up to share their resources. They've reached out. They've been very proactive with communicating their concerns about our students. So it's given us additional eyes and ears in our community that way. And then the final thing, because I have a small staff, I can't stress enough the importance of the relationships with my staff as a support unit for our students. The fact that we're willing and able to communicate so well, and we're able to bend and adjust our schedules to help each other out, that has been fundamental to make sure our students get the maximum amount of coverage that we can give them. So a healthy co-working relations is also critical to the success of a student program for our students.
Yeah, and I see a comment in here from Ms. Lynette Lindsay in the admissions office to ask us about how we're taking advantage of some of the, to support our students. And I'm sorry, the question specifically is, what programs have you designed for students to take advantage of virtual opportunities to learn how to navigate campus resources and physical spaces? And what I will share is that Brandon Britt is working closely and monitoring all of the new to Ohio State opportunities that have been established for virtual participation for like summer orientation and students who are new to Ohio State. And we plan to use a lot of those new virtual resources to practice, to use for our students during our Summer Academy program. And so what is different this year for the YSP Summer Academy program, as opposed to previous years, is that this program will be, this year will be 2 weeks long, so that we can do more virtual time together, but in not as many hours. And so because it is a virtual program, we're expecting students to be with us in a synchronous learning facility for about 4 hours a day for 2 weeks. The first week for us will be focused on writing the admissions essay. And then the second week is taking advantage of the resources that are already being established by universities to to transition our students to a virtual learning community. And so that is, if there are other attendees there who are working on summer programs, because universities also had to transition to this virtual format, it's a great free resource to go in and tap students to navigate the virtual tours that are being created, the games that are being created to engage students. And we're taking advantage of those opportunities and incorporating those into our summer programs. Jacob, did you want to add anything in terms of how you may be using virtual programs for your summer programming?
Sure. So, excuse me. Because my focus isn't just on the getting students into college, it's also prepping them during the 9th through 11th grade. My actual virtual summer programming, the exposure to different careers, professions, pools of knowledge, etc. One of the things I've done, I'm reaching out and trying to curate a list of professionals from everything from what would be like the conventional STEMs, engineers, biologists, etc., to the creative arts. I have a wonderful, I won't talk too much about this. I'm very excited. I have a science fiction fantasy author who's also a humanitarian worker who's agreed to speak with my students. And I have people from the performing worlds, just anyone who has had I shouldn't say anyone. I've been collecting individuals who have a successful career that are relying on some pool of their college experience. And one of the assignments being tied into our composition is to learn and develop interviews with these individuals. So I'm tying learning outcomes, the Ohio Educational Standards of Learning Outcomes, to this interview, but this interview also serves the dual purpose of exposing them to ideas and people who are doing things that my students have a nascent interest in, but aren't yet at the place where they're looking at going to college, especially my younger students. They're at the place where they need to be exploring the many options available to them. So I'm trying to build up that capacity so that the homework and assignments of the class are also doing some of that exposure work.
And this is our final question of today's discussion, and maybe one of the most important. It was posed also in the chat room. What are you all doing to take care of yourself? Compassion fatigue is common in the work that we do. So how are you all taking care of yourself?
Hey, Dr. Thomas.
Yeah.
I'm on vacation next week.
For sure. How are you all taking care of yourself during this time?
So I'm going to be very candid and honest. It has been hard for me. It is rough. I'm at home with both of my boys. So normally, my escape is to get with some friends and, go have a glass of wine or watch a movie or, any of that stuff. So it's been very hard to get that self-care or alone time. I'll be honest, I go sit on my back patio just to breathe in some fresh air and soak in the sunshine. Sometime, if any other parents on here, sometime, you got to go sit in your car, turn on the music and just, woosah and bring yourself together. I am fortunate. Sometimes I can just kind of go in my room and kind of digress, breathe, watch some shows and let them have their video game time so I can have some alone time. Another thing that I know some of my college friends, we have just about every Saturday since this whole stay in shelter, we've had our own Zoom sip and chat, be honest, pour your adult beverage and let's chat, let's laugh, let's talk, just a way to breathe and release at the end of the week.
Yeah. Kind of like Janisha, it's been difficult for me. I am an extrovert, and being in the house or being forced to sit in the house every day has been crazy. I'd like to say last week, I was talking to my wife. I was really dealing with anxiety. It just came out. This is the first time I've ever had like anxiety and panic attacks, and like all last week, it was really difficult for me, and I didn't know what was going on, and I just had to sit down and talk with my wife, and thankfully, God sent her to me, and she's a beautiful partner to have, and she kind of talked to me about some ways that we can try to get me through through the anxiety portion, because like you all know, I'm a very upbeat, loving, inner energy person. And the stress of me being at home every day, me dealing with some of my kids' issues, and then dealing with my own kids. I have a second grader who is very hyper. He's super intelligent, and his mind works so fast that he can't focus on anything. So me trying to get him to say, hey, let's focus on, you can do the math. It's boring. It's boring because you know how to do it already, but like let's do it. But trying to work with him, trying to be the best father that I can to my boys has been weighing on me. So been talking, like I said, talked to my wife and trying to figure out what we can do as far as like meditation to help me, because I don't know how to do that. So trying to learn how to meditate. I picked up a few books that I'm going to start reading just, on my own, because I really don't read, but it is something I have kind of taken a liking to. And I have a record player down in my basement, and I'm starting to get my records up so I can actually sit, listen to my Miles Davis, listen to my James Brown, so I can get those vibes in me. And plus, my wife gave me a honey to-do list, so that's it's not self-care, but I gotta get it if I want that peace. I'll tell you that right now. So just trying to work my way through that. It's been hard for me, but I got good people on my side, and we gonna make it.
We want to thank you all for your vulnerability in answering that question honestly, because they're absolutely correct. This work takes a lot of compassion, and it takes a lot of yourself, where there are days where you spend more time serving the needs of someone else's child than that of your own, or someone else's family than that of your own. And so we certainly appreciate you in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, as well as across the state of Ohio, for the work that you do in supporting college access and college readiness for some of our most vulnerable populations of students that are in school right now. And so we thank everyone for attending today's panel. It gave us really great information. This panel has been recorded, and so it will become available later on today and tomorrow. I will also be sending you an evaluation. We want to know how we can become better in getting the information out to you based on our practice and our work. And then you can always go to odi.osu.edu to learn more about the work that we're doing across the Office of Diversity and Inclusion in our student service departments. We thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.